Before Kris Kristofferson became one of the greatest songwriters in American music, he looked like the last person who should have ended up in a Nashville bar. He was brilliant, disciplined, athletic, decorated. He came from a military family that expected achievement in the most traditional sense of the word, and for a long time he gave them exactly that. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He studied at Oxford. He boxed. He wrote. He looked like the kind of man headed toward command, prestige, and a life of official honor. Then he joined the army. Kristofferson became a helicopter pilot and rose to the rank of captain. He was the kind of officer who made sense on paper. Sharp, reliable, controlled. At one point, he was even being steered toward what looked like a serious, long-term military future. That is what makes the turn in his life so dramatic. Kris Kristofferson did not stumble into songwriting because he had no other options. He walked away from an impressive life with too many good options. And that is much harder. It is hard to leave failure behind. It is much harder to leave success behind, especially when everyone around you believes that success already has your name on it. But somewhere under the discipline and the military structure, Kristofferson wanted something else. He wanted words, songs, a life that did not look secure on paper, but felt true when he was inside it. That decision came with a price. His family did not celebrate it. In fact, for a time, the break was painful and deep. Kris Kristofferson was not just changing careers. He was rejecting the life his father understood. And when a son walks away from a world built on duty, order, and command, the people who raised him do not always hear dream. Sometimes they hear betrayal. So Kristofferson went to Nashville. And Nashville did not greet him like a future legend. It greeted him like another man with a guitar and too many ambitions. Nashville has a way of humiliating talent before it rewards it. And Kris Kristofferson was humiliated plenty. He worked hard jobs. He struggled. He wrote songs that did not instantly change his life. For a time, he worked as a janitor at Columbia Records. That detail has lasted because it feels almost too perfect. A future Hall of Fame songwriter, emptying trash in the same building where his songs might someday be recorded. But that is what makes the story work. It was not glamorous. It was proximity. He kept writing. He kept handing songs around. He kept pushing his way toward people who mattered. And eventually, the right songs found the right ears. One of the most important of those ears belonged to Johnny Cash. Cash heard Sunday Morning Coming Down and knew immediately that it was not ordinary. That song had loneliness in it, hangover truth, streetlight honesty. It did not sound cleaned up for radio morality. It sounded lived in. That mattered to Cash because he could hear the real thing when it came along. And when he recorded it, Kris Kristofferson's life changed. Not all at once. That is not usually how it works. But the line between obscure songwriter and major artist had been crossed. Johnny Cash did more than record the song. He defended it. When television censors wanted certain lyrics softened, Cash refused to give up the truth of what Kristofferson had written. That act of protection mattered as much as the recording itself, because it told the industry something. Kris Kristofferson was not just another songwriter hoping for luck. He was now backed by one of the most morally authoritative voices in American music. Then came more songs. For the Good Times, Help Me Make It Through the Night, Loving Her Was Easier, and then Me and Bobby McGee. That song would go on to live several lives, and one of those lives would belong to Janis Joplin. That is another reason Kristofferson's story pulls people in. But Kris Kristofferson was never only a songwriter. That is part of why he has remained so compelling. He had the writing, the face, the voice, the politics, the restlessness. He could move between Nashville, Hollywood, and the wider American imagination without feeling fake in any of them. Then came film. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. A Star Is Born. By the 1970s, Kris Kristofferson was no longer just a songwriter's songwriter. He was a star. But unlike some stars, he always seemed slightly suspicious of stardom itself. That gave him gravity. He was handsome enough to be marketed, smart enough to reject simple packaging, political enough to unsettle audiences that wanted their country stars uncomplicated, romantic enough to become mythic, troubled enough to remain human. His relationships added to that mythology. His marriage to Rita Coolidge made them look, from the outside, like one of the great glamorous pairings of the era. But like many public love stories, what people saw and what people lived were not always the same thing. That tension followed him through much of his life. The same was true of his public image. Some people wanted him to be the rugged cowboy intellectual. Some wanted the rebel. Some wanted the lover. Some wanted the movie star. The truth was more interesting than any one version. Kris Kristofferson spent much of his life resisting simplification. That is why he lasted. He did not become important because he had one hit song or one famous role. He became important because he kept showing up at the intersection of intelligence, damage, tenderness, and truth. And for a first video about Kris Kristofferson, that may be the one thing worth remembering most. He was supposed to become the kind of man the world already knew how to admire. Instead, he became the kind of artist the world had to catch up with. He walked away from certainty. He chose songs. And American music has been living with the consequences of that choice ever since.